All right. Finally, I want to talk about how we increase our ability to produce. Now, remember earlier, I said, okay, this is our possibilities, and everything outside of here is impossible. Well, it's only impossible at present. Okay, it could be that we can do things to take this line and move it out here. So that's what the PPF is going to look like if we're able to shift, if we're able to increase the amount that we're able to produce. We're able to increase the amount of one good and the other good, not just increase one by giving up the other. So how do we do that? Oops. So we can increase any of our factors of production. Natural resources, if we have more, we'll be able to make more. Labor through immigration or increasing the, the working age requirements, before people retire. Lots of different possibilities. You could even say child labor. Okay, not saying that's a good thing, but I'm saying you could increase the labor force, and that would increase our production, at least short term. Capital, okay, physical and human capital. So education, building factories, all these things makes your labor more productive, and it's going to shift your PPF outward, where suddenly things that weren't possible before are possible now. And again, entrepreneurial ability. Any innovations in technology is going to shift us outward. Infrastructure, okay. I've talked way too much about infrastructure, but all of these things would increase our possibilities. This is going to be seen as an outward shift. Now, on your test, I will let you know in advance if there's a technology shift that only affects bread, then you'll see just this shift out. So you'll see a line that looks kind of like this, where butter, this end on butter hasn't really moved, but your bread will increase. Now, because we're able to produce more bread, we can still produce more butter because we can give up some of our bread production. But if only butter has improved, then our PPF might look something like this, where our maximum bread production hasn't changed. All right. Can production possibilities be decreased? Absolutely. Any decrease in our factors of production obviously is going to have an issue. Exhaustion of natural resources. So I've kind of spoken poorly about restrictions and regulations on natural resources, but it should be said that sometimes you can exhaust natural resources because of unsustainable growth. We're very careful in our wood and paper production to make sure that we're able to grow back whatever we cut down, because otherwise, we can't have paper, we can't have lumber. So it's very important to, have these industries working sustainably. Same thing with fishing. It's very, very important to not overhunt and overfish, because then, if we wipe out these populations, we can't produce more after that. Decrease in the labor force. If there's issues with health, or if there's emigration, which is when people leave your country, and that's going to result in a decrease in the labor force. Depreciation of capital. Now, this is a natural thing that happens. If you build a factory, it doesn't last forever. If you buy new machines, they will break down or they will get outdated. So these assets will devalue over time. So this capital stock will decrease over time. So you have to keep producing capital just to replace the old capital. Or there could also be a decrease in education or experience or what have you, okay? So any decrease in capital is going to cause our PPF actually to shift inward, where we are able to produce less than we could produce before. Destruction or depreciation of infrastructure. Okay, so war is a huge issue because we wind up blowing up bridges and roads and airports, and kind of disrupts everything. Any sort of civil unrest can really mess with our organizational infrastructure, like education. Um, you know, when people are in the middle of a war, a lot of times it's really hard for kids to get educated, um, because they're having to, move from place to place. Everything's very unstable. So that's a challenging thing. And yes, like I said, that decrease is going to be shown as an inward shift on our PPF. So as we talk about these production trade-offs, two common ones I want to mention is war goods versus peace goods. Now the way I mean on this is, ideally, the ideal amount you want to spend on war goods is zero. You don't really want to spend a bunch of money on missiles and guns and armies and whatever. You'd rather spend it on kind of just your local prosperity. However, if you don't spend any money on military stuff, then there's the possibility of someone invading, taking all of your goods that you've gotten via prosperity. So there's this kind of trade-off, like, how much do we want to spend on a military? Too much, and we're kind of risking prosperity at home. Too little, we're kind of risking security. And this is the main one that you're going to see on your test, because this is kind of a bigger thing. Consumption goods versus capital goods. I like to call this the study versus party trade-off. Okay, so here's how you can kind of think about this. If you build capital goods, if I build factories and machines and I focus on education and infrastructure and all this kind of stuff, that's going to lead to more production in the future. I'm going to be, my PPF is just going to move outward and outward and outward. But if all I'm making is stuff like factories and all of this stuff, then I'm not producing anything else. So I may have all this production that I get to make in the future, but right now I'm not producing things that I can actually consume right now. So that kind of leads to some lean times right now, pushing towards good times in the future. So it can lead to some short-run suffering. But if you work the other way and you completely focus on consumption goods and you don't push to build more capital, then you're not going to see this economic growth. So you're not going to have that prosperity in the future. So it's kind of that same trade-off that you make whenever you're deciding to party or study. If you just party, you're kind of throwing your future away. You're not building the capital, the human capital that you need to earn more in the future and have a stable life where you can party better in the future. But if if all you do is study, then you're just kind of miserable right now. And if you spend your whole life studying, work, then you're not getting any of that enjoyment out of the capital that you've built. So this is the trade-off that societies make. It's kind of a long-term versus short-term trade-off. So this is pretty much the PPF. Next up, we're gonna talk about what happens when we look at trade.